Anyway, please come inside the house. When I got back from work, there was a battered housewife from next door standing in front of my house. Seeing her looking so cold and miserable, I let her into my house and offered her a bath and a meal. I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to her, so I asked her about her situation. Then, 3 weeks later, a stern-looking man in a black suit came to my house. Please accept the rights to a $6 million house. What? My name is John. There's nothing particularly outstanding about me. I'm just your average office worker. But there's one thing that sets me apart from other office workers. It's that my parents have already passed away. If they had died of a normal illness or old age, there might be others in a similar situation. But in my case, it's different. It happened about a month after I started working at my current company. Back then, I was still learning the ropes and had my hands full just taking care of myself. A call came into the company. My boss told me with a pale face, "John, listen up, okay? Stay calm. Boss, the police just called. They said your parents were hit by a runaway car and taken to the hospital." What? My mind went blank at my boss's report. My coworker working at the next desk had the same reaction, his hands stopping on a keyboard. "We're going to the hospital right now." "Huh? I'll drive you there, so stay strong." "Manager, I'm leaving the rest to you." "Yes. John, hang in there." I think I was really fortunate to have such great bosses at the company I worked for. They immediately took me to the hospital and stayed by my side as I stood there in a daze. At the hospital, a uniformed police officer greeted me and guided me to where my parents were. The place they took me to was the morgue. I heard that my parents were just walking across a crosswalk when an elderly person driving a car plowed into them. Apparently, the driver suddenly took ill while driving and died of a heart attack. The cause of death was myocardial infarction. Of course, the driver couldn't hit the brakes and kept pressing the accelerator, crashing into my parents. Dad, Mom. The police officer gave a matter-of-fact report, and I collapsed on the spot. My boss held me up and set me down on a chair in the morgue, but I couldn't stop shaking. "Your parents died instantly, as did the driver who caused the accident. I'm glad that at least my parents were able to pass on to the next world without suffering. But that doesn't make the sadness go away." That same day, the family of the driver who caused the accident showed up, and a man who seemed to be the son immediately started apologizing. He looked to be around the same age as my dad. "I'm so sorry. My father, I'm so sorry." Then my boss stood up as if to protect me. "I understand that in a sense you are also victims, having lost your father, and I can understand your desire to apologize quickly. But he has just lost both his parents at once. Don't you think it's inappropriate to offer such an apology when he's overwhelmed with grief?" At my boss's words, the shoulders of the man shook. "I'm sorry. I know. But your apology here and now is just for your own satisfaction. You must be too emotional to think straight, having suddenly lost a family member. Please come back another day to apologize through a lawyer." My boss's firm words were truly reassuring. If it weren't for him, I might have lunged at the man in front of me or accepted his apology and forgiven him. The family of the perpetrator left at my boss's urging, but he gently prodded me to comfort me. "Boss, it's okay. You need to rest for a bit. The company will handle the rest." "Okay. Yes." At my boss's words, I found myself in tears again. The company really took care of everything that followed. I received a compensation from the perpetrator's family, and I was able to receive a formal apology with a lawyer present. Thinking about it calmly, the person who caused the accident is no longer in this world. Their family just kept apologizing. I had no one to direct my anger at, so in the end I just received the money, and that was that. To be honest, I didn't want to be involved any further with the family that caused my parents' deaths, so it worked out. So today, too, I had to work alone from the house I used to live in with my parents. I was living such lonely days. My house is in an ordinary residential area, but the houses in the surrounding neighborhood are often brand new and impressive buildings. In particular, the house to the right is large and grand, and had been vacant for a while. It seems someone recently moved into that house. Someone's finally moving in. I think to myself as I glance at the moving truck. It was a big truck, so it caught my attention, but I don't know who moved in. I've heard that these days, with privacy concerns and whatnot, people often don't do moving and greetings at apartments and condos. The young family that moved into the house next door must be like that. In the end, there was no greeting. I thought I could at least say hello in the morning, but I never ran into them when leaving for work. Still, I figured I could just greet them whenever I did see them. A few days later, on my way home from work, just as I was about to reach my house, I witnessed a woman walking in front of me drop her groceries as her paper bag tore. Oh! Hearing the woman's small cry, I immediately rushed over. I picked up an orange that had rolled to my feet and went over to the woman, but it would be difficult for her to carry everything home in the torn paper bag. I offered her my own reusable bag that I always carry, saying, "Please put everything in here to take home." What? But my house is right there. When I pointed to my house, the woman said in surprise, "Oh, I see." Sensing something odd about the context, it seemed the woman lived in the luxurious house next door. The woman's name was Emily. Emily was, how should I put it, extremely thin, and her voice was faint and small when she spoke. Emily seemed a bit surprised to learn that I lived next door. Well, I can say I don't understand that feeling. After all, my house is so run down, you couldn't even flatter it by calling it a nice home. Oh, I'm sorry. I just assumed an elderly person lived there. No, it's an old house, so it can't be helped. I replied to the apologetic Emily with a wry smile. I'm sorry for not introducing myself. My husband said moving and greetings aren't necessary these days, so, I figured as much. I know many people nowadays think neighborly relations are unnecessary. About this reusable bag. I'll return it right away, so please wait a moment. Emily hurried inside, saying that. I watched her go, and after waiting a bit, Emily came back holding something. The neatly folded reusable bag and beautifully wrapped cookies. I'm pretty confident in my baking. Please have some if you'd like. Inside the cute wrapping were delicious-looking cookies that could pass for store-bought. The simple, bite-sized round cookies looked like something you'd make at home with kids. Thank you. Did you make these with your children? No, I don't have kids. It's just me and my husband living here. I see. Even if I wrap them like this, I'm the only one who eats what I make, but I enjoy both making and eating sweets. I could tell that Emily, who smiled softly like that, really loved baking. However, the fact that she's the only one eating them means her husband probably doesn't eat these sweets. Thanks for the cookies. I said a quick word and opened the wrapping on the spot to eat a cookie. The bite-sized cookie had a vanilla flavor and crumbled softly in my mouth. It was truly delicious. No flattery needed. Delicious. It's been a while since I had such tasty cookies. I can feel your passion for baking. I expressed my thoughts, including my gratitude. Emily probably didn't expect me to open the wrapping and eat one right then and there. After looking at me in surprise, she thanked me with a big smile. Thank you so much. It started from that day. Emily and I never exchanged contact information, but we started frequently greeting each other. Also, after I got home from work and turned on the lights, a few minutes later the intercom would ring. My intercom is an old one that goes ding when pressed and dong when released. But when I went to the front door, Emily had started bringing me sweets. At first I intended to refuse. After all, she was a married woman, and I understood this wasn't exactly praiseworthy behavior. However, her actions clearly stemmed from a desire for someone to eat the sweets she made. Talking to her, I learned that Emily's husband Mark was devoted to his work and the couple never went out together. They were still a young couple, but with no kids, their life must have lost its color. Could she be lonely like me? I realized Emily's loneliness. One-sided, I couldn't flatly refuse, and I started accepting her sweets and giving my thoughts. Saying things like yesterday's baked goods had a great texture and went well with coffee. I like them. Or those crispy sweets are perfect when you want a little snack. They're bite-sized so you can eat them while working. I could have as many as I want. Became the norm. Emily would then head home looking blissfully happy with a big smile. I spent several weeks like that. I know this lifestyle isn't good. Emily is a married woman. Yet I found myself growing more and more fond of her presence. My heart, which had gone cold after suddenly losing my parents, was starting to feel warm again. Just seeing Emily's smile made my wintry night-like heart feel the warm rays of a spring sun. I never visited her house. I just waited for Emily to bring me sweets. Then one day, Emily stopped bringing sweets. She had been bringing them every other day, if not every day. Did her husband find out? A wife bringing homemade sweets to a single man's house. It's only natural to suspect infidelity. I'm innocent, but from the husband's perspective, he can't be at peace. It's gonna be lonely again. Ever since Emily stopped coming, I've been feeling the same loneliness as when I lost my parents. No, even greater loneliness than back then. I've been spacing out more at work, making even my boss and manager worry. I don't really have any hobbies, so nothing is fun no matter what I do. Gradually my appetite diminished, and even when eating things I like, it felt like chewing on sand, making it even harder to eat. I could feel my energy draining, but even though I knew this wasn't good, there was nothing I could do about it. Jeez. I was starting to feel a creeping sense of despair about various things when I finished work that day and headed home. I've been feeling heavy this whole time, and I know I need to snap out of it, but I just can't get motivated. Thinking that, I lifted my head and saw a figure in front of my house. That swaying shadow would make you think it was a ghost. Huh? That figure wasn't a ghost, of course, but her hair was a mess and her feet were bare. She wasn't even wearing sandals, let alone shoes. But that figure was unmistakably Emily. I hurried over to her with a start. Emily. Getting closer, I could see clearly. The clothes Emily was wearing were dirty, and she wasn't even wearing a coat. It's winter now. Emily was thoroughly chilled to the bone. When Emily, who had been hugging her own arms, embraced me, my course of action was decided. Emily, please come inside the house. I'm sorry. Her voice was so faint, I knew she was nearing her limit. I urged Emily into the house, my hand on her back. I immediately put the heater on and made Emily a hot chocolate. Here you go. In the bride room, I could see that Emily was terribly dirty. And being barefoot, she looked miserable from head to toe. What on earth happened to you? I'm sorry. I'm not accusing you. Why were you outside in that state in this season? Actually, my husband kicked me out of the house. What? Emily told me the circumstances, sniffling and sobbing. She said her husband had kicked her out of the house 3 days ago. What was he thinking? Kicking her out in this cold weather in light clothing. If it rained or snowed, she'd freeze in no time. Since that long ago, where were you for those 3 days? I'm embarrassed to say, but the park. What? I was homeless. I furrowed my brows at Emily's reply and showed her to the bathroom. I have many things I'd like to ask, but you must be cold, right? Please use the bath. But I'm dirty, so it's a bath. Feel free to use my mother's soap and shampoo. I explained the soap, shampoo, and hairdryer in the bathroom. For a change of clothes, I offered some of my mother's. Emily seemed hesitant but nodded as if enjoying a bath for the first time in a while. While she was in the bath, I prepared a simple meal. Tonight's dinner was tater tots I bought from the nearby shopping district. 1 serving of chicken noodle soup split between 2 people that's easy on the stomach, and a salad with just lettuce, cucumber, and cherry tomatoes. Add some meat and it's a sufficient meal. If it were just me, I would have made do with just the tater tots and soup. Just as I finished preparing, Emily came out of the bath. She tilted her head, asking about the 2 meals laid out on the table. Where are your parents? Oh, it's just me. What? I lost them in an accident. I was reluctant to say it, not wanting to worry kind Emily, but there was no hiding it in this situation. When I honestly told her that my parents had passed away in an accident, Emily shed large tears and grieved for me. Just that warmed my heart. So these clothes belong to your mother, and you cherish them, right? Yes, but if no one wears them, they'll just get eaten by moths. Thank you for lending them to me. After that, we had dinner facing each other. Emily said it's really delicious, and ate in a way that made it clear she truly found it tasty, which made me happy and enabled me to properly eat a meal for the first time in a while. Afterwards, I made some warm tea and asked Emily to tell me more. Even if it's meddlesome, sometimes letting it all out when you are going through a hard time can make you feel better. The story Emily told was terrible. My husband has chauvinistic views. Women should shut up and do as men say. Walk 3 steps behind a man. Wake up earlier than a man. Don't go to bed before a man, he says. He sounds way too old-fashioned. What's wrong with her husband? If anything happens, he immediately yells, and even if nothing happens, he says you're really useless. If there's even the slightest thing he doesn't like, he hits me. That's. On top of that, he said that's why I told you I hate sweets. What's with this sickly sweet smell? I forbid you from baking ever again, and threw out all my baking tools, like my whisk and rubber spatula, even things that can be used for cooking, without my permission. What? I did the housework properly. Baking was the only time I felt healed, but having that taken away from me, not knowing what to look forward to or work hard for, I fell into despair. I lost all my energy. Emily hung her head and sniffled. Inevitably, I started neglecting the housework, and my husband got furious, saying there's still dust. I told you to always have at least 3 side dishes. There are still wrinkles in my shirt. I endured it, but 3 days ago, he said I didn't need a wife like you and kicked me out of the house. No way. I was at home, so I wasn't wearing a coat, and I didn't have my wallet or phone. I had nowhere to go, barefoot. I could tell that Emily, covering her face with both hands, was in really bad shape. Did you contact your parents' home? No. Actually, my mother passed away from illness a long time ago, and I was raised by my father the whole time. What? When I got married, my father was overjoyed and said now I can rest easy. I wanted to put my father's mind at ease. With only that in mind, I did my best and couldn't rely on anyone for those 3 days. I had been sleeping in the park, but when I reached my limit in terms of hunger and mental state, my feet unconsciously turned toward your house. Emily's story was pretty harsh. I'm sorry for bothering you. Not just today, but up until now. What? You figured out that I was bringing sweets because I wanted to hear your thoughts and be praised, right? I'm really selfish. I'm sorry. Emily apologized to me while crying. You don't need to apologize, Emily. More importantly, let's go to your father's place. But I don't have parents anymore. But you have someone you can rely on. And just maybe, I think your father would be happy if you relied on him. You think so? Yeah. It's better to say what you can while they're still alive. If you regret not saying something after losing them, it'll be too late. When I persuaded her like that, Emily shed tears again. And the next day, I lent Emily some of my mother's clothes and a bit of money, and she got in a taxi to go back to her parents' home. 3 weeks passed since I sent Emily back to her parents' place. Suddenly, a stern-looking man in a black suit came to my place, and I felt like pretending I didn't see him and closing the door. The reason I didn't was because the man introduced himself as Emily's father. Believing his words, I invited him inside my house. I showed him to the living room of my old house, served tea, and we sat facing each other. He straightened his posture and looked straight into my eyes. Thank you for convincing my daughter to come back home. No need to thank me. So your daughter was able to safely return home, I see. To be honest, I was worried her husband might obstruct her, so I was relieved. I am Emily's father, Brandon. My daughter is a bit sheltered, so if you hadn't convinced her, who knows what would have happened. I can't express my gratitude enough. Brandon's words cleared up a mystery I had been pondering for a while. As I thought, Emily seemed like a well-born lady. Please accept this as a token of my appreciation. What? It's a deed to a 3-bedroom house on the top floor of that high-rise condo over there. Market price is $6 million. Here you go. Saying that, he placed the deed to a high-rise condo on the table. Surprised by the sudden offer, I pushed the deed back and refused. What? I don't need that. That's not why I helped her. Then why did you help my daughter? Asked that while he kept smiling. I was at a loss for a reply. But even if I said it was just normal kindness, he probably wouldn't believe me. I'm sorry. I ended up falling for your daughter. For Emily. Of course, I never intended to do anything and haven't done anything. The reason I helped her was because I like her. Because I didn't want to see Emily's sad face. I honestly spoke my mind. I heard about you from my daughter. The food, the clothes, even lending her your late mother's clothes. Just hearing about it made me realize how sincere and good you are. But meeting you directly like this, I feel that way even more." Saying that, Brandon held out the deed again and said with difficulty, "That's exactly why. I hate to say this, but won't you live in a new house? This house is, well, quite. Indeed, my house is quite old and run down. Drafts come through the gaps, and it's so cold I suspect the insulation has been eaten by mice." Emily must have told him about that condition. That's why Brandon is trying to give me this deed with good intentions. This house is filled with precious memories of my late parents, so I want to keep living here forever. I'm sorry, even though you went to the trouble. When I said that with heartfelt apology, Brandon slowly shook his head. "No, you truly are a kind-hearted person. Please, I ask that you take good care of my daughter." He looked straight into my eyes, saying that once more. Not understanding the true meaning behind his words, I tilted my head. But after that, I was able to get in touch with Emily through Brandon, and we were reunited. On my next day off, I was invited to Emily's parents' home and treated to homemade sweets. I thought many times over. The sweets Emily makes have a gentle flavor. After that, I was able to divorce that man. What? Really? Yes. Apparently, he was terrible at work too, and his co-workers were complaining about how overbearing he was, so he was about to get fired. I figured as much. Hearing about his attitude toward Emily, I thought he was probably the same way at work. Well, regardless of that, I intend to properly squeeze consolation money out of him. Emily, smiling as she said that, had become an incomparably different woman than before. Emily said, "I don't want to cause you trouble, so I'm gonna get strong. I'll do my best." After Emily's divorce was finalized, we officially started dating. In our state, you can't remarry for 30 days after divorce. It seems that this waiting period exists because former spouses typically have 30 days to appeal a divorce agreement after the divorce is finalized. We got married without issue a year later, giving it some leeway. Emily agreed to live in my family home, but as it is, it's too run down. By the way, Emily's ex-husband already left that big house to consolation money and demotion, so I think Emily won't be bothered by it either. I was relieved about that too. Considering Brandon's feelings, he probably wants his daughter to live in a proper house. Realizing that, I resolved to renovate my family home. The renovation company was an acquaintance of Brandon's, someone who properly understood my feelings. Taking into account my desire to not erase my parents' memories, they renovated my family home while preserving its original look as much as possible. A few years later, we were blessed with a long-awaited child. Gazing at the children's room we had prepared for when we might have a child someday, I muttered, "It's good to cherish memories, but we gotta cherish the future too, huh?" Emily, now my wife, said, "That's right. But I want to cherish the past too. The present exists because of the past. So, let's make lots of memories and build happiness in this house from now on." We smiled and expressed our gratitude to our parents in our hearts. And as I gently stroked the growing belly of a happily smiling Emily, I felt hope for the future that was to come.